One tiny startup accidentally produced the people behind Tesla, SpaceX, YouTube, LinkedIn, Palantir, Yelp, Affirm, and some of the biggest investments in modern tech history. At one point, it became almost absurd. The same former employees kept appearing behind world-changing companies over and over again. Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Reid Hoffman, Max Levchin, David Sachs, Roloff Botha, Chad Hurley, Steve Chen, Jawed Karim, Jeremy Stoppelman. It started feeling less like coincidence and more like somebody quietly assembled a future tech dynasty years before the rest of the world realized what the internet was about to become. And the craziest part? Their original company looked completely doomed. Fraud attacks hit non-stop. Servers crashed constantly. Investors panicked. Banks hated them. Regulators didn't fully understand what they were building. Employees slept inside the office beside overheating computers, while organized scammers stole money faster than engineers could stop them. During one stretch, executives reportedly tried to remove Elon Musk as CEO while he was away on his honeymoon. Another employee later claimed the company felt like a cockroach surviving nuclear war. This was PayPal. And without this one chaotic startup, the modern internet might look completely different today, because PayPal didn't just create a payment system. It became the training ground for a generation of founders who later helped reshape transportation, social media, online video, digital finance, surveillance technology, venture capital, artificial intelligence investment, and even private space exploration itself. But nobody inside those offices thought they were building history. Most employees were focused on surviving another week, keeping servers alive, fighting fraud, covering payroll, trying not to collapse before the next funding round arrived. To understand why PayPal mattered so much, you have to remember how weird the internet still felt back then. Younger generations experience the internet almost like weather now, always there, constant, invisible. But during the late 1990s, the internet still felt unstable and slightly sketchy. People connected through loud dial-up modems that sounded like machines screaming at each other before opening a web page. Websites loaded painfully slowly. Online shopping felt suspicious. Most people genuinely feared typing their credit card information into random websites. Amazon mainly sold books. Google barely existed. Wi-Fi wasn't normal. Smartphones didn't exist. YouTube didn't exist. Streaming video barely worked. Social media hadn't consumed human attention yet. The internet had information, but the infrastructure underneath still felt unfinished. And one of the biggest unsolved problems was surprisingly simple: moving money online. Today, people casually tap phones against payment terminals without thinking twice. Back then, digital payments felt awkward and risky. Banks moved slowly. International transfers were painful. Small internet businesses struggled to accept payments efficiently. Fraud was everywhere. Identity theft became a growing fear across the web. Most people still trusted physical banks more than internet companies, and that created a gigantic opportunity for founders obsessed with the idea that software could rebuild entire industries from scratch. One of those people was Peter Thiel. Another was Max Levchin, a programmer originally from Ukraine, who became obsessed with cryptography and security after growing up during the collapse of the Soviet Union. In 1998, they launched a startup called Confinity. But here's the funny part. The original company wasn't even really about internet payments. At first, they experimented with encryption software for Palm Pilots, tiny handheld devices most people today barely remember. And this explains something important about early Silicon Valley culture. Many legendary tech companies didn't start with perfect vision. They stumbled into the right idea through chaos, market behavior, and desperation. Meanwhile, another founder nearby was becoming obsessed with a completely different problem. Elon Musk had recently sold his startup, Zip2, for around $300 million. Most people would have disappeared onto yachts after that. Musk immediately jumped into another company instead because he became obsessed with online banking. He believed traditional financial institutions were outdated, inefficient, and vulnerable. So he launched X.com, an online financial services company designed to reinvent banking through the internet. At the time, the idea sounded borderline insane. Trusting your savings to an internet startup in the late 1990s felt reckless, but Silicon Valley during the dot-com boom rewarded extreme ambition. Investors poured money into internet startups at ridiculous speeds. Some companies spent millions before building stable products. Others bought Super Bowl ads before making real revenue. Some had no business model at all. The entire industry felt euphoric and unstable at the exact same time. Then something happened that completely changed Confinity's future. eBay users discovered its payment product almost accidentally, and this became one of the most important moments in internet history. Small eBay sellers suddenly realized they could send and receive money through email much faster than traditional banking systems allowed. That mattered enormously because eBay itself was exploding. Thousands of strangers suddenly needed a way to transact online with each other safely. Mailing physical checks felt ancient. Wire transfers were annoying. Banks moved too slowly for internet speed commerce. PayPal removed friction. And humans become obsessed with technologies that remove friction, especially when money is involved. Very quickly, eBay sellers started recommending PayPal to each other, then depending on it, then practically forcing buyers to use it. At one point, PayPal reportedly handled payments for over 70% of eBay auctions. The growth became completely insane. During some stretches, the platform reportedly grew around 10% every single day, not monthly, daily. The company scaled so quickly that teams sometimes struggled to understand their own numbers in real time. But hypergrowth created another problem almost immediately: fraud. Massive fraud. Because wherever money moves easily, criminals follow. And PayPal became one of the biggest fraud targets on the internet almost overnight. Fake identities flooded the platform. Scammers used stolen credit cards. Organized crime networks started probing the system constantly. Some attackers created thousands of fake accounts simultaneously. Others exploited referral bonuses because PayPal literally paid people money to join. $10 for signing up. Another $10 for referrals. The company burned millions, trying to grow faster than competitors. Users started gaming the system aggressively. Fraud losses became terrifying. Some mornings, employees reportedly walked into the office and discovered the company had lost hundreds of thousands of dollars overnight. One former employee later claimed fraudsters were innovating almost as fast as the engineers trying to stop them. Max Levchin became obsessed with anti-fraud systems and built some of the earliest large-scale automated fraud detection technology on the internet. Teams analyzed suspicious behavior patterns manually. Employees studied how scammers typed, how quickly they moved money, how fake users behaved differently from real ones. Some employees allegedly started carrying guns after receiving threats connected to fraud operations. That's how chaotic parts of the company became. Former employees later described PayPal like a digital war zone. Servers overheated constantly. Desktop computers hummed through the night. whiteboards filled with fraud patterns and attack methods. Employees slept under desks during crisis periods. Pizza boxes piled beside networking equipment. People screamed across the office during late-night emergencies after discovering new exploits draining money from the platform. It didn't feel like a polished Silicon Valley success story. It felt like the internet barely holding itself together. And this environment shaped the psychology of the people inside PayPal permanently. Employees became obsessed with speed, adaptability, paranoia, and aggressive problem-solving because the company genuinely could have died at any moment. Then, things became even more chaotic because Elon Musk's X.com and Confinity started moving directly into the exact same space: digital payments, internet finance, online banking. The rivalry became brutal. Both companies burned huge amounts of money trying to dominate the market before competitors arrived. Eventually, the two companies merged in 2000, but internally, the merger created non-stop tension almost immediately. Musk wanted X.com to become a giant, all-in-one financial platform capable of replacing traditional banks entirely. Others inside the company wanted to focus more narrowly on payments infrastructure. Employees argued constantly about branding, coding systems, strategy, leadership, scaling, and survival. One infamous internal battle centered around Musk, pushing the company toward Microsoft infrastructure while others strongly resisted it. Future PayPal executives later admitted the company sometimes felt close to imploding internally. Then came one of the strangest moments in Silicon Valley history. While Musk was away on his honeymoon, several executives reportedly moved to remove him as CEO. Imagine building a startup so unstable that a leadership coup happens while the CEO is literally on vacation. And somehow, things still got worse, because right as the company fought internal chaos, the entire internet economy itself started collapsing. The dot-com bubble burst in 2000. Suddenly, hundreds of internet startups died almost overnight. Investors panicked. Funding disappeared. Silicon Valley emotionally transformed from euphoric optimism into fear within months. Companies that once looked unstoppable collapsed incredibly fast. Pets.com disappeared. Webvan collapsed. Huge amounts of investor money evaporated, and many analysts believed PayPal might become another corpse from the dot-com era. The company still lost massive amounts of money. Fraud remained catastrophically expensive. Banks viewed PayPal suspiciously. Regulators worried about money laundering and financial instability. Governments barely understood internet finance yet. The company operated inside legal gray zones while trying to scale globally at internet speed. Employees later described periods where it felt like fighting wars on multiple fronts simultaneously: fraud, regulators, infrastructure failures, investor pressure, internal politics, scaling problems, competition. And somehow, the company survived anyway. Mostly because, unlike many dot-com startups, PayPal solved a real problem people desperately needed solved. That became its lifeline, especially after the bubble collapse forced Silicon Valley to rediscover something shocking. Businesses actually needed revenue. And inside all this chaos, something bizarre started happening quietly in the background. The company slowly filled with people who would later become some of the most influential figures in modern technology. Reid Hoffman worked there before founding LinkedIn. Chad Hurley, Steve Chen, and Jawed Karim later helped create YouTube. Jeremy Stoppelman later launched Yelp. David Sachs later founded Yammer. Roelof Botha became one of Sequoia Capital's most powerful investors. Peter Thiel later co-founded Palantir and became Facebook's first major outside investor, Keith Rabois became one of Silicon Valley's most connected operators and investors. Max Levchin later founded a firm. Elon Musk pushed into Tesla and SpaceX. Looking back now, it almost feels fake, like some alternate history movie where one random startup accidentally assembled future internet royalty before anyone knew how important the internet would become. Seriously though, why this company? Silicon Valley had thousands of startups during the dot-com boom. Most disappeared completely. So why did this one office accidentally produce half the modern internet? Part of the answer was selection. PayPal attracted ambitious people because the problems were brutally difficult and emotionally intense. Mistakes inside financial systems became catastrophic very quickly, but timing mattered too. These employees learned how to survive internet-scale chaos during one of the most important technological transitions in modern history. They learned how viral growth worked, how network effects behaved, how digital trust formed, how users reacted psychologically online, how fraud evolved, how infrastructure scaled under pressure, how investors behaved during panic, how internet markets changed overnight. They essentially received a compressed education in surviving the modern digital world, while the modern digital world itself was still forming. Then came another turning point that permanently changed Silicon Valley. In 2002, eBay bought PayPal for $1.5 billion in stock. At the time, it became one of the largest internet acquisitions ever. Suddenly, many employees became young multimillionaires almost overnight, and this mattered enormously because Silicon Valley runs on a very specific cycle: experience, money, networks, confidence, risk tolerance. Instead of retiring quietly, former PayPal employees immediately started building new companies. Even more importantly, they kept helping each other, funding each other, hiring each other, recommending each other, sharing information constantly. The network effect escaped the company itself. That's one reason journalists eventually started calling them the PayPal Mafia. Half joking, half serious, because the pattern became impossible to ignore. Former employees kept appearing behind giant parts of modern internet culture and infrastructure. Elon Musk pushed into electric vehicles and private space travel through Tesla and SpaceX. At the time, both ideas sounded absurdly risky. Electric cars looked commercially weak. Private space companies sounded borderline delusional. SpaceX failed its first 3 launches and came terrifyingly close to bankruptcy. Tesla nearly collapsed multiple times, but Musk carried the same aggressive survival mentality visible during PayPal's early years. Meanwhile, Peter Thiel co-founded Palantir, focused on massive data analysis systems for governments and intelligence agencies. Reid Hoffman transformed professional identity into online infrastructure through LinkedIn. Former PayPal employees helped create YouTube after becoming frustrated by how difficult video sharing still felt online. Google later bought YouTube for $1.65 billion. Jeremy Stoppelman launched Yelp before smartphones normalized location-based internet behavior. Max Levchin continued building financial technology systems through a firm. David Sachs later became deeply connected to Silicon Valley power networks and politics. The pattern became surreal. Former PayPal employees kept appearing everywhere important inside tech history. And even though the companies looked completely different on the surface, many shared similar obsessions underneath: scale, infrastructure, data systems, digital identity, human behavior, network effects, attention systems, friction removal. These people didn't think software would simply improve society. Many genuinely believed software should replace huge parts of it, and timing amplified everything because the 2000s became one of the most important periods in internet history. Broadband expanded rapidly, social media exploded, smartphones arrived, cloud computing evolved, online advertising transformed business forever, human attention increasingly migrated into digital environments. Former PayPal employees kept building directly inside that transformation. Meanwhile, Silicon Valley itself started changing culturally. Technology founders became celebrities. Venture capital became more aggressive. Startup mythology intensified globally. The image of young engineers changing the world through software became deeply embedded into modern culture, and many PayPal alumni helped build that mythology directly. But over time, the story also became darker, because these companies eventually gained enormous influence over systems affecting billions of people. Social media platforms started shaping politics, mental health, and public opinion. Algorithms influenced human attention and behavior at global scale. Data systems expanded surveillance capabilities dramatically. Artificial intelligence accelerated rapidly. Technology stopped feeling like tools people occasionally used. It became the environment people psychologically lived inside every day. Palantir especially became controversial because of its connections to surveillance systems, military contracts, and intelligence operations. Critics increasingly argued that technology companies had gained too much influence over public life without enough accountability. Even platforms like LinkedIn quietly changed professional behavior. People started optimizing identities for algorithms, recruiters, visibility, and online perception constantly. The internet slowly transformed from something people visited into something people psychologically inhabited. And strangely, many threads of that transformation still connect back to PayPal. That's one reason this story feels bigger than startup history, because it captures the exact moment the internet stopped feeling experimental and started becoming civilization-level infrastructure. The former PayPal employees didn't individually build every modern digital platform, but together they influenced enormous parts of modern life: online payments, online video, social infrastructure, digital identity systems, AI investments, electric vehicles, recommendation algorithms, private spaceflight, data analysis, startup culture itself. The influence spread everywhere, and ironically, almost none of this looked inevitable during PayPal's early years. Inside those cramped offices, employees worried constantly about fraud attacks, lawsuits, infrastructure failures, investor panic, and whether payroll could even be covered. The future still looked uncertain. That uncertainty shaped the people inside the company profoundly. Many carried similar psychological traits into future businesses: obsession, adaptability, intellectual aggression, competitiveness, high risk tolerance, and an unusually strong belief that software could redesign massive parts of society. Some people admired that mindset, others found it dangerous, but either way, its impact became impossible to ignore. Today, billions of people interact with systems built directly or indirectly by former PayPal employees without even realizing the connection exists. A teenager watches YouTube videos on a smartphone while applying for jobs through LinkedIn, paying digitally through systems influenced by PayPal-era infrastructure, while AI companies, funded by former PayPal investors, reshape entire industries in the background. The modern internet feels fragmented on the surface, but underneath it, certain groups of people shaped enormous parts of its architecture, and very few groups influenced it more than the people who once worked at PayPal. But maybe the strangest part of the entire story is this. PayPal itself no longer feels culturally dominant compared to many of the companies its former employees later created. YouTube became larger. Tesla became louder. LinkedIn became professionally unavoidable. SpaceX transformed the space industry. Palantir became politically controversial. Meanwhile, PayPal slowly faded into the background. Quiet, functional, almost invisible. And maybe that's fitting, because infrastructure usually matters most when people stop noticing it entirely. Without that exhausted group of engineers fighting fraud inside one collapsing office, the modern internet might look completely different. No YouTube, no LinkedIn, maybe no Tesla, maybe no SpaceX. Just one random startup that almost died before the world realized what it had accidentally created.
Thank you so much for listening to this audiobook. I truly hope these words inspired you, motivated you, and gave you something valuable to take with you into everyday life. If you enjoyed this recording, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and explore my other inspiring audiobooks created to support your growth, mindset, and motivation. Your support means a lot and helps me create more content for listeners like you. See you in the next audiobook.